Welcome in, Bills Mafia, and welcome back to the Go Bills podcast. I am your host and founder of the Go Bills podcast, Brett. Glad to be with you on this snowy Sunday in Orchard Park, New York, where the game was supposed to be played between the Cleveland Browns and Buffalo Bills. But unfortunately, with all the snow that happened in Buffalo, the game got moved to Detroit as the Bills will prepare for this game against the Cleveland Browns, as well as the game against the Detroit Lions as well. And first, before we start this off with our pregame show, the most important thing that we have to mention is that our thoughts and prayers are with everybody that's been affected by the snowstorm in Buffalo. I know there's been a lot of deaths in Buffalo from the snowstorm, and my thoughts and prayers are with all the families that have been affected by this snowstorm. But as well as I want to say, I got to give a shout out to Bills Mafia, and it's incredible to see every video that you see on the internet through Twitter, as well as all the other social media platforms, of all the people that have helped the players, as well as coaches and all the staff get to the stadium and get out on time, as well as the runway crew for Buffalo Niagara Airport. What they did to get everybody in line to play this week, make sure that they left on time. It's incredible to see. That's the most important thing. But now, without further ado, let's begin this with the pregame show. We'll start with the injury reports for both teams and start with the inactives, starting with the Cleveland Browns. And let me pull up my notes real fast. The inactives for the Browns is Kellen Mond, Greg Newsome, Demetric Felton, D'Anthony Bell, Isaiah Thomas, Drew Forbes, and Pierre Winfrey. For the Bills, these are going to be probably the players that are going to hurt us the most. There's a lot of players on this list, especially, and it's going to have an impact on the game. Kaiir Elam out with an ankle injury, Tre'Davious White out with the knee injury, Tremaine Edmonds out with the groin injury, Greg Russo out with an ankle injury, AJ Klein, who was recently acquired from the Chicago Bears, is out with a undisclosed injury, but it's probably just because he wants to get acclimated to the play calls for the Bills. Justin Murray inactive again, and Tommy Sweeney inactive. The Bills did call up two players from the practice squad this week, in Tanner Gentry, a wide receiver, as well as Xavier Rhodes called up again from the practice squad this week. Hopefully Xavier Rhodes gets some playing time today, which I'd love to see. He's a good cornerback in this league. He played for the Minnesota Vikings for a number of years. Thought that he was going to get into the game last week against the Vikings, but he didn't, unfortunately. But we'll see where it goes today, and hopefully he gets into the game and makes an impact in this game. The Bills' offense has struggled the past couple of weeks in terms of offense efficiency, especially in the red zone. So let's begin with a little preview of the game for this. Let me pull up my notes real fast. The Bills have lost two straight games last week in overtime to the Minnesota Vikings, as well as the game against the New York Jets. And the biggest question mark has been quarterback Josh Allen's play over the last couple of weeks. He has 6 interceptions over the last few weeks, as well as a fumble. And it's just been costly mistakes that are coming at the wrong time. Most of these have been happening when it's in the third or fourth quarter, and it's just taking the Bills out of this game and allowing other teams to be able to stay in the game. If you look back to the game against the Minnesota Vikings, he had the 2 interceptions, both of them thrown to Patrick Peterson. One was a bad play where he just didn't read the coverage. The other one, he was trying to do too much, and he just pressed down, and he's been trying to press the ball down the field way too much, which is something that I do like that he does, but I think that you have to take what the defense gives you. And that's one thing that Josh hasn't done over the last few weeks. If you look back at the last play of the game that ended the game in overtime, Buffalo could have taken the check down to Devin Singletary and had a 15-yard gain, set the ball up for a 1st and goal at the 5-yard line. But unfortunately, Josh took that ball, threw it into coverage, and he threw it late, which didn't allow Gabe Davis to be able to make his cut, and it was thrown late. And that's what had Patrick Peterson jump on the route, and then the game was over. The Bills also are going to have to go up against a really good offense in the Cleveland Browns, especially in the run game. The run game is excellent with Nick Chubb averaging about 5.7 yards per carry, as well as he has exceeded 100 yards this season in 5 games. So Buffalo is going to have to stop the run. That's an area the Buffalo has struggled with over the past few weeks, is not being able to stop the run. And this is going to be a game where you're going up against an elite running back in Nick Chubb, as well as Kareem Hunt, who hasn't been playing very good over the past few weeks, but he could regain light, especially if the Bills are not able to stop the run. Let's talk about the key matchups for the Bills. The first one is going to be the turnover rate. The Bills are turning over the ball at an alarming rate. They're actually ranked dead last in the NFL at about 20% turnover rate on their offensive possessions. Buffalo must do a better job of holding on to the ball, especially with Josh Allen. You can't have that many interceptions and fumbles, as well as just turnovers left and right. It doesn't work. If you're losing the turnover rate in the NFL, you're probably going to lose games. And that's what's happened over the last few weeks, and that's why Buffalo has struggled immensely. If you hold on to the ball, you could have had more points. If you look back at the plays that Buffalo should have had back and could have had back, Buffalo turned over the ball, and then the other team scored. And that's a 14-point swing. 7 points for Buffalo, 7 points for the other team. Buffalo could have had those 7 points, and it would have been a totally different story. These games wouldn't have been as close as they were, and Buffalo would have played a lot better. That's the main reason why all these teams are staying in the games, is because of this. Allen has to do a better job of winning the turnover rate this week, and it's going to have to come down to better play calls, as well as being sure that he does a better job of taking the checkdowns to running backs, as well as to different receivers over the middle of the field. That's one area that he hasn't done a good job of this season. There isn't that security blanket like he had last year with Cole Beasley, as well as Dawson Knox. So if I'm Ken Dorsey, I'm telling Josh Allen to make sure you take the check down when you can. Next is going to be Deion Dawkins versus Myles Garrett. And this is going to be the key matchup of the game for me for the Bills offense. Deion Dawkins is going to have a big game and be able to stop Myles Garrett in coverage. You know what Myles Garrett does as a pass rusher? He's an excellent franchise defensive end, and he has to do a really good job of stopping him one-on-one, as well as if he's getting beat, he's got to be able to talk to Roger Saffold and tell him that, hey, I need some help over here, or get help from a running back. So if I'm the Bills, you've got to make sure that you're stopping Myles Garrett and don't let him have an impact in this game, especially when you have a $257 million quarterback in the backfield that has a UCL sprain. You don't want to have Myles Garrett hitting that arm, and then Josh Allen's out for the rest of the season. So if I'm Aaron Kromer and the Bills offensive line, I have to make sure that Deion Dawkins is doing a good job of stopping Myles Garrett. Next is going to be another key matchup for the Bills on offense, which is going to be Stephon Diggs versus Denzel Ward. This matchup is going to be a fun matchup for me. I think anytime that Diggs goes up against an elite receiver or elite cornerback in the NFL, it's going to be fun. And this one is going to be an intriguing matchup because Denzel Ward has been injured over the last few weeks, and Buffalo is going to be playing the number one receiver who's coming off of 12 catches for 128 yards. If I'm Buffalo, I make sure that I target Denzel Ward left and right. Make sure if he's in one-on-one coverage, you make sure that you go after him. And I think that Diggs can beat anybody in coverage, no matter who it is in the NFL. He can beat him in coverage. And if it's one-on-one, I trust Diggs in these statistics. Last week, Diggs had an amazing catch, a one-handed catch that was a highlight reel, and he looked fantastic. So you got to make sure that you're taking the shots with Diggs and making sure that you have somebody that's going to, on the defense, that's going to double cover him so that it allows the Bills offense to utilize different receivers such as Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and Dawson Knox as well. The Browns last week allowed over 9 yards per catch to the Tua-led Miami Dolphins, and they have to do a better job of stopping this Bills offense, which is ranked second in the NFL in passing yards this season. As for the defense for the Bills are going to have to stop Nick Chubb. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The Bills' run defense over the last few weeks has not done a good job. They've given up over 140 yards per game, as well as 5 yards per carry. The Chubb has been averaging 5.7 yards per carry this season. And last week against the Minnesota Vikings, the Vikings averaged 8.5 yards per carry with Dalvin Cook. Buffalo will have to do a better job of making sure that they cover the ground game this week. And it involves a lot of tackling. That's the biggest thing for me that I've noticed is the tackling has been so poor over the last few weeks, as well as when the safeties are making their angles towards the running back. If you look back to last week with Cam Lewis, who was making his first start as safety, he's a former cornerback for the Buffalo Bulls, he just didn't hit the right hole on that touchdown run, and that allowed Dalvin Cook to be able to go for the touchdown. If he were to hit the right hole on that play, he would have done a better job. But unfortunately, it led to a touchdown. And I think the biggest thing also is in the second half, Buffalo also missed Tremaine Edmonds, who's going to be out of this game as well. If you look back to this last week, he was doing a really good job in coverage and making sure that he was also in on the runs as well. He was hitting the holes and making sure that he was hitting the running backs in the backfield. And that's one thing that Buffalo has to do a better job of, especially with Tyrel Dodson making his start today. Dodson's got to make sure that he's hitting the holes at the right time and also getting into the backfield and making an impact in this game. Another key matchup is going to be Amari Cooper versus Dane Jackson. And if you look back to last week, the Vikings had an astounding 193 yards on 10 catches with Justin Jefferson in coverage. While Buffalo did do a good job in coverage with the statistic that came out that said that the Bills, on 9 of the 10 catches that Justin Jefferson had, the probability of him catching the ball was less than a 50% chance. They have to do a better job of covering the receiver. It seemed like every time that Kirk Cousins was throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson, he was making highlight reel catches or coming down with another catch as well. Buffalo has to do a better job of double teaming the number one receiver for the opposing offense and making sure that they're covering them better. You can't have Amari Cooper making a big impact in this game as well. If you look at Amari Cooper as well as his sidekick, Donovan Peoples-Jones, they've accounted for over 50% of the team's passing offense this season. Buffalo has to do a better job of covering number one receivers over the final 8 games of the season. And I think they will do a better job of this when they get Tre'Davious White back, who's coming off of the knee injury last season on Thanksgiving. Another key to the game is going to be the Bills' pass rush. And while this may be controversial, what I'm going to say, it seems like the pass rush just hasn't been there all season. It comes and goes, and it's just not consistent enough. If you look at Von Miller, he's done an excellent job in pass coverage, but it just seems like the opposing player on the other side of the ball isn't doing a good job when it's not Greg Rousseau. And I need to see guys like A.J. Epinesa, as well as Shaq Lawson and other guys step up and make sure that you are getting sacks on the other side. That's a big issue that I've noticed in coverage with the Bills, especially in the interior pass rush of the Bills as well. Ed Oliver's done a good job in pass coverage, but it seems like it's the other player on the other side that just isn't doing enough. There has to be that consistent pass rush that comes into play. And I want to see it a little bit more. If you look back to last week against the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins threw the ball 54 times. And I think the statistic, I believe it was, that Kirk Cousins was only pressured on 7 of those throws. And he has to do a better job, especially Leslie Frazier, of dialing up some blitzes to make sure that we are getting to the quarterback and taking him down. I think Buffalo only had about 3 or 4 sacks in that game, and I'd love to see that number go up this week. Let's go over the keys to the game for the Bills. And the first one is going to be winning the turnover battle this week. The turnover battle is going to be very important for the Bills, especially if they want to win this game. Last week against the Minnesota Vikings, Buffalo lost the turnover rate 4-2. Buffalo has to do a better job of winning that turnover rate, creating interceptions on defense, and making sure that you hold on to the ball as well on offense. And I think Buffalo will do a better job of this week, but It just has to come down to Josh Allen making sure that he takes the check downs this week and does a really good job of that. Second is going to be take the dump offs. And this goes into with 1 and 2, making sure that the turnover battle is won, as well as making sure that you take the dump off when it's there. You have running backs on the roster in Nyheim Hines, Devin Singletary, as well as James Cook, who are all good pass catchers in coverage. So make sure you take the dump off there, get the 5 to 10 yards. You don't have to play hero ball every single week. That's the Wyoming Josh. We need Josh to be able to take the Bills down the field each and every drive, get some points on the board, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal, get points on the board, and put pressure on the opposing team's offense. That's what we need from the Bills. Now, on defense, the most important thing for me is going to be the Bills stopping the run. If the Bills are able to stop the run, they will have success in this game. But if they're not wrapping up guys with tackles as well, they're going to struggle in this game, and it's going to be a game that's going to come down to the wire. But I think Buffalo is going to do a better job of covering the running backs, making sure that they wrap them up. I really have liked what I've seen out of Damar Hamlin, but I just need to see the opposite safety, whoever's playing, if it's going to be Dean Marlowe, or if it's going to be Cam Lewis, or if it's going to be Xavier Rhodes, for instance, that plays. I need to see that safety step up in coverage. And I do believe that it's going to be Jordan Poyer today, so I pray that it is Jordan Poyer in coverage today, because we need to see more out of the Bills in the run game. Next, my key to the game is going to be the red zone efficiency. If you look back to the last few weeks, Buffalo has turned the ball over immensely in the red zone. And I do think that that comes down to the Bills not utilizing their receivers the way that they should. You have an excellent red zone receiver in Gabe Davis, as well as Isaiah McKenzie, who has done a great job in the red zone as well. And Buffalo also needs to target Dawson Knox in coverage as well. He is a big receiver, and he can come down with the ball, especially in the red zone. So making sure that you are taking the right target in the red zone is going to be important. And the last key to the game is going to be controlling the time of possession. Buffalo hasn't done a good job of holding onto the ball and winning the time of possession battle. That's going to be important today. If the Bills want to win this game, you've got to make sure that you're running the ball, utilizing the offensive line, making sure that they are doing a good job in the trenches. It's going to come down to a little bit of a smash mouth football game for me. And I think that the Bills are going to do a better job of this as well. But we have to be more aggressive with the offensive line, especially in the run game. So if Buffalo wants to win this game, you got to be doing a good job in the trenches on both sides of the field. As for score predictions for the game, I do have the Bills winning this game 34-13 in favor of the Bills. And I think that it's going to be a really good game. Josh Allen's going to play really good. I think that he's going to have 3 touchdowns today in the passing game. He's going to go for 30 for 42 for 276 yards, 3 touchdowns, as well as adding 58 yards in the run game, but he won't have a touchdown there. The last touchdown is going to go to Devin Singletary, who's going to have 77 yards on 40, or not 40. That would be excellent if he did have 40 carries, but it's going to be about 15 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. And I think he's going to make his impact as well in the receiving game. And I think you're going to see a bit of a different offense than what you saw over the last few weeks, where Buffalo was taking the ball down the field and trying to hit the home run every single time. I think they're going to use the short game, and that's going to be the way that the Bills win this game. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter as well. So don't forget to follow us on all those social media platforms as well. And don't forget to follow us later today on YouTube and Instagram, where we'll have our halftime show as well as our post-game show immediately following the conclusion of the first half of the Bills game, as well as the conclusion of the game as well. This has been the Go Bills podcast, and we will see you at halftime of the Bills game later on today. As always, Go Bills.